Hello, my survivor friends. Chris here. How are you feeling? How's everybody doing? I'm a little sad myself. Are you a little sad we've reached the end of Season 1? Yeah, me too. But we're working on it. Today's not a normal episode. Today I am posting a copy of an episode from the Apocalypse Postcast. It's a show by Mike Darling in which he interviews me about Season 1 of this show of After the Apocalypse. I'm going to post the whole show. Just stick it in there. It's a little bit over an hour long. He does an intro. Then he plays the first episode of our podcast, of The Old Man. And then somewhere around 13 to 15 minutes in, he and I start the interview. But it was a lot of fun. And it came out really well. So thank you, Mike, for that. It was really a good time. And by the way, the word episode, that's an old Greek word from the origins of Western theater. It goes back to 400 BCE. Sophocles. Think, those guys. So epi means entering, but in our modern use, we've changed it to sort of mean between. So it's literally between odes, epi-odes, between odes. And in the original Greek tragedies, there would be singing and chanting. There would be a chorus. And this would happen in the beginning. Then there'd be some dialogue. Then there'd be more chorus, then more dialogue, then more chorus and singing and chanting. So the dialogue was the stuff between the odes. So epi-odes. There you go. And we've already picked up a new supporter on Patreon from the Wastelanders, our Wastelander friends. Thanks, Craig. Welcome. Welcome many other Wastelanders out there. Hope you guys get a good showing this year. Hope it's not too apocalyptic. Feel free to enjoy this episode of Mike's Apocalypse Postcast or skip it. Either way, it's all good. I won't be offended. I'm currently working on two things. First is consolidating Season 1 into a book, and second is working on developing Season 2 for you. Season 1 ended up being about 48,000 words long. Nice little chunk, about 120 pages of a paperback, and I've gotten an edited manuscript back, and I've got some of you giving that a read-through, looking for egregious typos and such. So thank you, Royce and Stephanie and Bill. I've got some cover art in progress as well, and I could use your help spreading the word when we launch. I've got some more work to do in navigating the Amazon labyrinth, like Theseus looking for the Minotaur, but it shouldn't take me more than a month, and we'll be back on it. I've already started putting my thoughts together for Season 2, and I hope to get started on that shortly, so keep checking in. Hope you're all enjoying your time off from the apocalypse. Would love to hear your voice over at our Facebook group. It's Old Man Apocalypse, all one word. If you haven't done so already, take the time now while we're having this nice little interregnum. Take the time to rate and review the show. We all know the best thing you can do is tell a friend. We love to see your comments. I read all of them, even the bad ones. I can use your support, right? So your comments, your friendship on this journey, chime in with any good ideas, especially ideas on how to spread the word. If you have a podcast or something else that you want me to get involved in, yeah, I'd love to do interviews, that sort of thing. If you're a creator and you want me to read some of your audio, some of your work into audio, or we could get Robert to read it, I'd love to do that as well and post it here on the feed to fill the dead air while I get Season 2 rustled up. So just let me know. CYKT Russell, 2 S's, 2 L's. Chris Yellow King Tom Russell, 2 S's, 2 L's at gmail.com. Links in the show notes. Love you guys. Thanks for the support and keep surviving.
What happened? We did this ourselves. They're coming. Can't be.
Where is everyone?
Hello, survivors, and welcome back to the Apocalypse Post, your field guide to post-apoc culture. A few weeks ago, I discovered this amazing podcast called After the Apocalypse by Chris Mad Dog Russell and narrated by Robert Weinheimer. It's an original story that follows 3 lead characters in the weeks following a global pandemic that wipes out 90% of the population. We first meet the old man, a lone surviving ex-doctor who spends most of his time trying to avoid trouble, but somehow keeps getting caught up in it. And then another character, a woman named KJ, who lost her whole family and has now struck it out on her own to see what remains outside the city. And of course, there's also a dog that's just trying to be a good boy. There's a lot of great storytelling podcasts out there, but not nearly enough in the post-apocalypse genre, so I was wonderfully surprised to find this one and discover it's a great story told in bite-sized chapter chunks and has some truly great production value. There is awesome music. Robert, the narrator's voice, is hauntingly somber, mysterious, and super engaging. And author Chris wraps out each episode with some great commentary and discussions about his favorite books and stories in the post-apocalypse and sci-fi worlds. I'm very excited because Chris has offered to share the first episode of After the Apocalypse right here and right now on the Apocalypse Postcast. And stick around because I'm going to have a discussion with the Mad Dog himself right after to learn a little bit more about the show and how his real life has influenced so much of the story. And if you like After the Apocalypse, I'll leave links in the show notes so you can find the rest of Season 1, which is 20 full episodes, as well as his Patreon page where you can help support the story. And with that, survivors, I bring you Chapter 1 of After the Apocalypse, titled The Old Man.
After the Apocalypse, a story of pandemic survival. Season 1, Episode 1, The Old Man. The afternoon sun slanted warm across the river's surface. The water was high from the recent rains, and a muddy hue swirled in the shallows. Early mayflies prickled the surface here and there, and lazy ripples hinted of fish and dorsal fins. A cottonwood tree trailed its branches into the flow, creating a rip in the otherwise placid waters. In the low hiss of water sounds, a man cleared his throat. "How long you been here?" the teenager asked. Near an old shed by the water, an old man leaned back, cleared his throat again, pulled aside the protective gauze of his mask, and spat. "Oh, a week or so now." He eyed the younger soul with a mix of weariness and caution. The boy continued, leaning back onto a fallen tree, feigning disinterest. Looking carefully sideways at the old man with shaded eyes. "You must have seen a lot in your time. What did you do before? You know, before it happened?" For the boy knew that the older ones liked to talk about the before times. Maybe he could get this surly old one off his guard. "Yeah, I did. I was there." The old man relaxed a bit and readjusted the weight of his wiry frame like a gymnast limbering up. "I was up north when it began. I worked my way down here where it's warmer. When the first wave hit, it got pretty weird," he continued. "Once the system got pushed beyond its limits, things got bad fast." He eyed the boy and gestured with a shrug to a partially collapsed, burnt-out building tipping into the river a few kilometers downstream. "A lot of people died," he finished as if to say, "That's all I have to say." But the boy wouldn't let it rest and pulled the thread. "I heard up north there was the dying, and those that was left in the cities took to killing each other." The old man shrugged. "Once the supply chain broke down, it was a zero-sum game. Take a place like New York City. You had 20 to 30,000 people per square mile, and no way to keep them fed. Starving, dying people don't act reasonably. He looked out over the water. It sorted itself out. The boy looked over the man's shoulder, eyeing the shed, and then back at the man himself. "What did you do back before, mister?" A sharp look. "It doesn't matter, boy. I was fast and smart enough to make it out into the country and stay alive. He covered 100 hard miles that first day and got out of the trouble. Those that couldn't run stayed and died. We ran and lived." His eyes clouded over with the faces of ghosts. The boy adjusted his dirty mask and casually moved his hand towards the hilt of his machete, as if brushing off a bit of dirt. "You got anything to trade, mister?" The old man noted the boy's movements and squared himself. "I have some dried fish and squirrel, plus some sweet marsh plant that makes a pretty good stew. I'll feed you, kid. I have what I need here, but I'm not looking for company." "I won't say no to a meal, mister. You've got a pretty good setup here." "I survive." "Thanks, mister. Let me cut some wood for a fire," the boy said, smiling, unsheathing his big blade and shouldering his way casually forward. The old man rolled quickly over the log he was seated on. Landing on his feet, he took off running along the sandy shingle of the river. "Come back here, you son of a bitch!" yelled the teenager, taking off in pursuit. But the old man already had a 25-foot lead and was racing ahead. The old man settled into a hard pace, his homemade sandals biting firmly into the soft mud. The boy was close on his heels, swearing and slipping. A well-traveled trail opening on the left, and the old man had disappeared into the forest and up a steep, loose, rocky climb. The kid was pretty good and was staying close. Others might have given up at the sight of the big climb. The man breathed deeply, filling his lungs, willing his heart to push blood down to soothe the burning in his thighs. 3 more stilted strides pushed him over the crest, and he shook out his arms, unfolding his lanky frame for the long descent along the ridge. He could hear the kid about 25 meters back now, struggling up the loose slope. He relaxed his form and balanced his body against the downhill with long, quick strides. Through a cedar thicket and back onto the river's bank, he pushed hard now for the shed. He rounded a corner and reached for where he knew it would be. The kid was breathing hard, and he came into view. He looked quite surprised, eyes wide in his dirty face as the old man settled his breathing and released the bolt of the crossbow. It struck the boy cleanly in the chest. The boy staggered a couple more steps with his momentum and fell, with that surprised look of unbelief still on his face. The old man scratched his scraggly beard and considered the kid laying on the ground, blowing bubbles of blood around the corners of his mouth. It wouldn't be long now. The old man hated to do it. He was supposed to save lives, not take them. But in this new world, after the apocalypse, the rules were different. It was every man for himself. Even so, something old and familiar felt sick inside of him. It was obvious to him that the kid was sent ahead to infiltrate his camp and catch him off guard. He saw it coming. It was his gift and his curse to be able to read people and see around the corners to what was probably going to happen next. He wasn't always right, but he was right often enough, and he had learned to trust his instincts. The kid had stopped breathing, had gone to meet his ancestors. He had been added to the great pile of bones that was humanity's legacy. What did the old man care? Why should he mourn one more death on top of the millions that had recently been rubbed out of existence? But still, it bothered him. Sure, it was him or the kid, but what was so special about him? One old man surviving in the apocalypse. What did it even matter? One more day? One more week? In the great chaotic calculus of the universe, maybe that kid deserved life more than the old man. Maybe he just snuffed out a future leader, the great savior who would rebuild this wreck of a world. The old man shook himself out of his thoughts. It was done. He wandered back into the shed he'd been squatting in and saw the old medals hanging on the wall. Some sort of race medals achieved by the previous resident. The old man had a box full of similar medals somewhere in a forgotten lifetime. The old man considered it for a moment. He took a medal from the hook, stooped, and hung it around the boy's neck. He put his hand on the boy's forehead and uttered a swift prayer to their ancestors. He asked for forgiveness. He dragged the body to the river's edge and rolled it into the swiftly flowing stream.
All right, survivors. Well, I hope you enjoyed that first episode of After the Apocalypse by Chris Russell, who's the author, and he's going to join me today to chat about it. Hey, Chris.
How you doing, Mike?
Oh, I'm having such a good time. I am loving this story, by the way. I got caught up this week, finally.
So you're all the way up to 19?
That's right, yeah.
19 was a good show.
It was. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
It really opened up the world.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, I'm working on 20 right now, which is going to close season 1. And I won't give you any spoilers, but 19 was fun. 19 was fun. And some of these, I'm figuring out what the characters are doing as I'm writing it.
Uh-huh. I know
I have
how
a
it
rough
goes.
idea of what
Yep.
I want to do, and I write it. and I have 3 guys who are friends of mine who help me edit. And they're sort of different. They each have a different viewpoint. So,
Oh, wow.
So sometimes it, like what I wanted to do, they'll go, "No, that's stupid. Don't do that. Do this." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." So yeah, it's kind of fun. We're crowdsourcing.
Nice. This first episode that we just listened to, it does such a good job of introducing us to one of the main characters, the old man. And it sets up the stakes of this new world he finds himself in. This young guy that's kind of infiltrating his camp, the old man is kind of onto him right away. What gave him away? What gave away this young kid? It seemed like he was just being pretty innocent, but the old man was onto him.
What I was thinking was that the old man at this point has already had some experience with this, right? Because we're, timeline-wise, we're 3-4 weeks into the apocalypse, right?
Yeah.
So he's already had some experience and he's been on the move. And so he's seen this, right? He's seen the fact that, people have sort of reverted to this feral trickster sort of environment. And I also wanted to, as the character, when I first wrote it and as I was developing this character, I wanted him to be sort of insightful, right? To know people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, there's certain people, you'll find this in business and in life, where they're always watching and looking at people and figuring out what they're doing, right? And you've been in those meetings where, you have that guy in the corner who doesn't say anything, but he's watching everybody. Right? And that's what I was trying to go for there.
Yep, and I love that he takes on a crossbow. You can carry a crossbow for a long time, and you can always pick up those bolts and use them again. So it's a very clever weapon.
Yeah, I was trying. I kind of was regretting using the crossbow in that first episode because it's kind of cliche, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, Walking Dead,"
Of course.
crossbow.
Yeah.
So I've been trying not to use it that much, even though one of my editors is always like, the crossbow, where's the crossbow? Right. So because I didn't want to just cheat and have that as like the, sort of foil all the time.
Interesting. All right, and I have to talk about this narrator's voice, the guy that's reading this for you.
Yeah.
He is so perfect. His voice is like, it really draws you in. It's got that rasp. It's got that
Yeah.
he has the, like, he sounds like the old man,
Yep.
which is kind of cool.
Yep.
How'd you find, well, first off, who is this and how'd you find him?
So his name is Robert, and he's a retired Navy guy out of Baltimore. And I did some shopping around, and I did, I gave everybody that first episode, and I said, read it for me.
Uh-huh.
And then I also shared that with some of my friends. I said, what do you think, A, B, or C? And they said, we like this guy. And I liked him, but he was reading it like it was a commercial, right? Like
okay.
was, and it came out sounding like Boys Town, USA. Hey, here we are. We're doing this, right?
Funny. Yeah.
And I'm like, he's got the right voice, but he doesn't have the right tone. So I wrote him, I said, Robert, you got a great voice, but it's the apocalypse, dude, right? We're not selling soap. Everybody's dead. I want you to, go out and smoke 3 packs of Marlboro and come back and give it give it that tone, right? That everything's dark.
Yeah.
And he responded really well. And I'll tell you what, one of the things I liked about this last episode 19, is that he's learning the characters, and he's really nailing the dialogue. Right.
Awesome. Yeah.
So it's hard to get dialogue because I hear it in my head, but he doesn't hear it in my head, right? He has to read it.
Yeah, and he's done a really good job of like, I noticed over the series, he does a lot more voices. He does a lot more like changing his voice to give these characters a little bit of breath. And it was really fun to kind of watch him explore what he's doing, while also finding out more and more about these characters. I thought that was great.
Yeah, and he's done some tricky bits where the dialogue's been tricky and really nailed it. And a couple of bits where I said, okay, I want you to act like this is it's a commercial on TV, or I want you to, throw some posh sort of accent in, right? And a couple of the bad guys, like this bad guy that he did in episode 19, that was amazing.
Yeah, you guys are gonna love. Oh man,
no spoilers.
I know, no spoilers. But I will say, like a good apocalypse movie, there are, or any good apocalypse story, this one has like great action. And then another thing I love that you do in this one is you let it breathe sometimes. You get deeper into these characters' minds and just see what they're thinking about, see what they're going through. I'm pretty sure there's an episode or two in there where there's not a ton of action. Maybe the characters, kind of moving from one place to another, and they're just kind of thinking about how things are going and how things were. And I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah, and I did that on purpose. I wanted to make it smarter than some of the apocalypse genre novels that I've read. Right. So there's been this recent wave of these, like in the indie press, where, you go on Amazon Kindle and get, 5 novels for 99 cents a piece. And they're, 5 books in a series like this. And they're all action without any kind of inner dialogue. And it's cool for about 2.5 books. And then you just get bored, even though they're blowing people up and blowing the heads off zombies every 5 minutes. It gets rote. Right. So I wanted to be smarter, and I wanted to have smart characters who could talk about things like history, or talk about things like, religion or whatever it is, in such a way that it resonates with people, right? And that's the fun part of having a dystopia or an apocalyptic universe, is you can ask these questions, right?
Yeah.
What would, a doctor think if you dropped them into this situation, right? What would they do?
Right.
What would a lawyer do if you dropped them into the situation, right? and
Yeah.
and play with those themes. So yeah, I'm glad you picked that up.
Oh, totally. And as you were just talking about that, I remember like, okay, so one of my favorite movies and a lot of people's favorite movies is the original Jurassic Park. And it had a certain magic to it because it, you know, it's a Spielberg film. So it had the action, it had a lot of pretty things to look at, mostly giant dinosaurs. But it also had those moments of calm, those moments of regrouping where the characters could have some interaction and, you know, kind of share a little bit about what they're going through, while also trying to keep each other calm. Specifically when Dr. Grant has the kids up in the tree and they're looking out at the brachiosauruses. I think that is the scene that defines the movie for me because, one, it's where the character is changing. You know, he didn't like kids and he's starting to, you know, appreciate them, to care for them again. But it's also this moment of calm in the middle of ridiculous action on both sides. So I agree. And I think all good stories should have those moments of calm.
Yeah, and I don't know if you picked that up or not, but there's character arc, right? So the characters internally are struggling with stuff, and they'll start in one place, and their journey is to get to another place. And again, without giving out spoilers, I wanted to work some of that into the main characters. So you see that arc, right, where they're struggling with this stuff, and they're evolving and growing, or maybe devolving and growing, right?
Yeah, totally. All right, so can you give us kind of a what are we going to expect out of the rest of season 1? What are we going to see these characters do throughout season 1?
Yeah, so it's a lot of universe building where we have to know, okay, who survived, right?
Mm-hmm.
And develop a couple of main characters that we can then care about and follow. One of which is a dog.
I love the dog.
We've got to have a dog, right?
Yeah.
And add in some antagonists, right? Some bad folks, and sort of establish that there is this risk, because you know nobody's going to listen to a story unless there's stakes, right? So what are the stakes? But the stakes have to be bigger than just running from the zombies. There are no zombies in here, by the way. This is not a zombie apocalypse.
Even though it is a plague, there is no zombies.
There are no zombies, yeah. Our people stay dead.
Yeah.
They die horrible deaths, but they stay dead.
Yeah.
But you got to have those stakes, right? And the stakes have to be bigger than just running away from somebody with a gun, right? Or getting in a fight. They have to be bigger than that. So as I progress through this, we're building those stakes. And those stakes are for the world, right? What's the world going to be coming out of this? Right? And how are we going to get there?
And can you kind of define the world, like, you know, prior to this story starting? What is happening? How have things devolved? Kind of like, let me know what's going on outside of the area that these characters are in.
So I'll tell you a story, right? This first chapter popped into my head that we just listened to. I was down in Atlanta, and I was at a trade show in downtown Atlanta, and it was March, the second week of March in 2019, right? And if people want to think back to where we were the second week of March in 2019, that was right at the beginning of the pandemic, right?
Hold on, I'm doing my math here.
Was that 19 or 20?
2020, yeah.
2020, sorry.
Yep.
My bad. But
how long have we been in this thing?
Yeah, right. Forever, it seems. What year is it? I don't know. But so I was there at this trade show, and it was like creepy because, you know, there weren't any people around and everybody's talking about plague, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I got up one morning and I went for a run, and I found a trail that took me down to the Chattahoochee. I was staying up on the north side by the ballpark, by the new ballpark. And I found a trail that went down to the Chattahoochee, and I was running down the Chattahoochee, and I was thinking, this would be a great place to start an apocalypse right here on the Chattahoochee,
cool.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where that scene comes from. So I played out the plague at that point and said, okay, what if this plague kills off 90%, you know, or 95% of the population? What's going to happen? What kind of chaos is going to ensue if you have that kind of that kind of threat and that kind of population drop really quickly, right? And what's that going to do to nature? What's that going to do to the infrastructure? What's that going to do, most importantly, to the people in these characters, right? And my premise is that stuff will go to hell very quickly.
Right.
And there will be a lot of initial chaos, because we saw a lot of initial chaos, right? As people try to react to this and they don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
So I try to paint in that chaos. And then through season 1, we're getting, probably a couple months in. So things are starting to mellow out. All the fires are starting to go out, but now new centers of gravity are starting to coalesce, right? So that's really, that's sort of the timeline and the setting.
And how long did this plague take from patient 0 to where we're down by 95% of the population? Is it weeks? Is it months? It sounds like it was pretty darn fast.
It's fast, right? So my premise is it's weeks, right? And I'm gonna have to figure out the science behind that. You got to trust me. You got to trust me at this point. But I have some ideas on how that could happen.
Okay.
Without any spoilers for season 2. But
gotcha.
So there's some interesting evolutionary things, just as a little spoiler, that our old friend Yersinia pestis did to be so devastating in the Middle Ages, which is the plague, by the way.
That's the Black Plague? Yersinia pestis.
Yersinia pestis, yes.
I never knew its name.
Yeah, it did this cool thing where it said, hey, prairie dogs aren't good enough, I'm going to jump to rats.
Yeah.
And then it said, oh, rats aren't good enough, so I'm going to jump to fleas. And fleas, I'm going to make it so they get really hungry but can't eat anything but infect whoever they bite, right? So it did these series of evolutionary steps of jumps that made it incredibly devastating, right? And that was a bacteria. So I got to figure out how to do the same thing with a virus. But yeah, you're right. It's a couple of weeks, right? And if you think about the chaos that kind of speed would induce, right? Just chaos. Everybody would be unhinged.
Yeah, we've seen that with different local experiences, coastal flooding. People, well, first off, I'm so proud of when I see people actually trying to help, but there's also a lot of looting that happens. Crime kind of goes unpunished for in certain places, and yeah, people will change pretty quick when their life is on the line or when their family's lives are on the line.
Yep.
And when they feel like it's a me versus you rather than a we're all in this together, humans can devolve very quickly.
Yeah, there's a very thin line between most people and that kind of de-evolution, right? So that's a fun part of this kind of universe, is you get to play with those themes, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah. So and to your point, historically, we've been through a bunch of apocalypses, right? Local apocalypses.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if it was that episode or the second one where I talk about, the Romans in Britain, and then, you look at the Byzantine Empire, these people, if you talk to them at the time, they would have gone, yeah, my life just went away, right?
Right.
My civilization just disappeared on me.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? So yeah, it's a common human theme.
Oh, totally.
And you know what's hilarious, Mike?
What's
that? Is that dystopia is so popular right now, whereas you probably couldn't give away a utopia book where everything's cool and everybody likes each other, right?
Well, yeah, we're in a bit of a no one trusts the government, and probably rightfully so, phase right now. We both lived through 9/11. I have to wrap my mind around the idea that there are adults out there that were born after it at this point, which is kind of wild. But yeah, we've found our own little bits of dystopia come out of 9/11 with the government took some more rights to spy on us without us knowing, and the security lines at the airports completely changed. Even still, it's kind of mind-boggling that there's this much security just to get on an airplane.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's little bits like that man, I hope it doesn't happen again, so that we don't have to like take a next step, because it already feels like a little bit of police state when you're trying to travel like that, you know?
Yeah, well, if you turn that back around to what we're talking about, right? That's again the power of being able to play with these themes, right?
Yeah.
In a dystopian universe.
So you mentioned when you were talking about this story being in its first inception, you said you were running. So you're a long distance runner?
Yes, I am.
That's awesome. I never got into it, but I run short distances, and that is my limit.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of peak involved there on my part, right? Because I'm an older guy now, and having the old man outrun, and sort of tactically know that he could beat that kid up the hill,
right?
Because he is a trained ultra runner. He's got that skill, and just playing with the fact that that's probably a really valuable skill in the apocalypse, right?
Right.
Being able to run long and far and hard, right?
Yeah. And both of your main characters. So what we don't hear in this episode is there's another character, KJ, that gets introduced, and we kind of follow her storyline as well. She is like a corporate professional, but she's also dedicated to staying fit. So is there a connection to your life and staying fit and finding that as a way to just stay healthy and stay alive?
Yeah, I mean, there's all that. It's definitely an enabler, but with KJ specifically, and again, we won't spoil anything, but I wanted her not to, first of all, I definitely wanted her to not be this weepy female, lead, right? Or be your classic, Roman mother-in-law bitch. I wanted her to be a standalone, strong, athletic woman, right? So not a sex appeal type woman, but a strong, athletic woman who's willing to kill people if she has to, right?
Right.
And I wanted to show that sort of character arc from beginning to end of how she evolves. And I didn't think I was going to be as successful, because I mean, who am I, right? Like I said, I'm an old guy. What am I writing a female character? What do I know about that? And I'll tell you what, I've got a ton of positive feedback from women who are like, well, I love this character, right? So there's something about KJ that, when she starts to turn into the character that she is, that women really can, I guess, they can say, that's great.
Right.
They can see themselves in that sort of transformation. So, and I wanted her to be strong, but sort of like CrossFit strong, sort of like triathlete strong, right? So, you can pick stuff up, you can swing from rafters and that sort of thing, right?
Right, which also comes into play.
Yeah, and play with the theme that, most people when they meet her are going to underestimate her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you did mention that you've got some fan art coming, so we can see these characters. Are those done? Are those ready?
Well, I had one initial fan art that I put up on my Facebook. It was actually one of my editors. His daughter is in art school in Rhode Island, and she did a quickie for me. But I have out, I've got 2 people working on cover art for me for this. Uh-huh. So I'm going to wrap season 1 at 20 episodes. Uh-huh. And I'm going to turn that into a book, ebook, audiobook. Right?
Great. Oh, so we'll see the art with that book.
Right. That's cover art. So I got one guy working on it who I'm not impressed with what he's done so far, but hope springs eternal. And then I also asked my friend's daughter, I said, hey, you do this, do it well, I'll pay you. Because she was pretty close to the mark on her first sketch. And that's, like I said, that's up on my my Facebook page. But the cover art for the podcast shows that sort of that old guy there. That was just some stuff I found online and played with. I like the dark nature of it.
I should also mention there is a third character that we've mentioned earlier, the dog. And his name's Bill, which is a very unusual name for a dog. Where did that name come from?
Bill the dog.
Bill the dog.
That you're going to find out in some dialogue in the future.
Okay.
Where that name came from.
Okay.
But yeah, so Bill's an interesting character in himself. People like Bill.
Yeah, and we do get some of it's written from his perspective, which I think is pretty fascinating.
Yep. Again, trying to do stuff. I said, okay, I'm going to try to write the first half of this episode from the dog's perspective, right?
Yeah, right.
And yeah, it went okay, right? So
oh yeah, and what's really funny is like he does have a little bit of that personification that you'll find in a cartoon where he's got the mind of as astute as a human. He can think about things and he's not just thinking food. That's my person. I need food.
Yeah. So, but I'm a dog guy. So I've had a couple of dogs who actually run with me. And so I've had border collies, and anybody who knows border collies knows that, they are super smart. Right. And that's the problem is they're just super smart and they want to do stuff all the time, which is a challenge. Right. So yeah, Bill, got to have a dog.
Yeah, and he's a very necessary part of the story. I don't know how to say this without spoiling. Oh man.
Yeah.
Just wait. Keep listening to this podcast because you're gonna get to Bill and just find out how important that little pooper is.
He's a good dog.
He's a good dog. Yeah. So is this your first post-apocalypse story that you're writing and podcasting?
Yeah. So it is and it isn't. I've been a creator and a writer my whole life, right? Mm-hmm. So I have other stories and other sort of brief forays into this. But this is the first time I organized myself and said, hey, I'm going to do this. And the reason I did it as a podcast, again, was to force myself to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say you're going to do it, but committing in podcast form. So now you got a bunch of people out there who are waiting for the next episode. You got to do it, right? So yeah. So I needed something to do in the apocalypse that was that kept the creative streak going there, right? So.
Yeah, of course. And you started after the apocalypse. I think you launched in January of this year, right? 2021.
Correct. Yep.
Which is just a few weeks before I started doing this, which is a podcast version of the YouTube show. But I absolutely love it. How do you like podcasting?
So it's fun, right? I mean, everybody has a podcast now, right? Like I said, I started podcasting back in 2007, 2008. And it was different then, right? Because it was only like 6,000 podcasts, maybe.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, now there are millions.
Hard. It was technical. You had to do stuff. And the audio was terrible. And all that stuff. And they were hard to listen to. But once the iPod came out, it sort of exploded. But now everybody has one. So that's the old joke, right? In Silicon Valley, if you're at a party and you can't remember somebody's name, you just ask them, hey, I really like your podcast. How's that going? Right?
That's great.
But no, I like the medium a lot. And because it's very democratic, right? And everybody's got something to say, and maybe there's only 10 people who care about what you have to say, but there you go, there's 10 people.
Yeah, and everyone's an expert in something, or at least we can talk about something, or come up with original stories or whatever it takes. Everyone's got some creative bug that they need to let out.
And it democratizes, right? Because otherwise, how would you have done this in the 1990s or 1980s, right? You couldn't have done it, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't have done this. You would have had to write a book and get it published. And that never would have happened, right? So podcasts allow people to give themselves permission to be creative.
Yeah, and I think podcasts are now where YouTube probably was 10 years ago, give or take, where, there's a lot of channels out there. You're right, it's been democratized. The technology's there so that people can do things pretty easily at home, which is, it's a lot of fun.
It is, yeah. It's a lot of fun. I'm using Acast for this new one just because it's simple, right? It's just simple.
Yeah, I want to actually pick your brain about that a little bit after the show.
Sure.
But yeah, so let's see. What else do we have here? Is there already plans for season 2?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Are we going to follow the same characters?
Yes.
we're gonna keep going.
Feel like we're playing 20 questions here. Yes, we're going to keep going. The timeline might jump around a little bit, and we're going to introduce new characters. I have some new characters. I actually already have some of these chapters written.
Oh, cool.
And I think season 2 is going to be sort of, how do I say this? Sort of like The Hobbit, right? Where you have the Battle of the Five Armies. I'm going to start because like I said, centers after you're into the apocalypse for a while, center of gravities start to coalesce. And so we're going to walk through those different centers of gravity and how they come together and interact, right?
Awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Perfect.
And I'm hoping to do 5 seasons if I can.
Awesome.
So that's, that should get me to retirement.
Awesome. So if you this one took you about 6 months, are you expecting season 2 to come out like for fall, winter, or you're going to take a little break?
So like I said, I want to turn season 1 into book form.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that before. So I've self-published before. So that's not a big effort. It just requires some time and some focus on my part. And unfortunately, I have a full-time job. So like the rest of us, right? You get time for your hobbies. But actually I've been thinking about this, and as we got to the chapter 20, which I'm working on right now, I'm thinking to myself, oh, this is great. I don't want to stop. I want to keep going. So maybe a month, maybe a couple of months, no more than a couple of months.
All right. Because this is
I won't pod fade. You can look at my resume. I never pod fade. I've still got a podcast that I started in 2008. I'm on episode 459.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
But that's the lesson, right? For creatives, if you give your first, we talked about giving yourself permission to do something like this. But if you can keep doing it, you're just, maybe it's this little thing, maybe it's 1,500 words and you're stacking that up every week. By the end of, 10 years, you're going to have a lot of words. You're going to have 1 million words, right?
No kidding. Right. Yeah, and I do say this as a bit of a selfish fan. Like, I would like season 2 to come out as soon as possible.
Well, there's the Patreon page.
Oh, tell me more.
Because Robert has to get paid, right? He doesn't do this because he I'm sure he loves it, but he needs to get paid. So, no, I have a Patreon page where you can contribute.
Awesome. And let me see if I can pull up that. Let's see. Oh, yeah, here it is. Patreon.com/aftertheapocalypse. Ooh, nice and easy.
There you go.
Yeah.
So currently my outflow is a little bit ahead of my inflow. So that's another reason for taking a little break, right? To get the capital to move on.
Do your patrons get any bonuses, any special things?
Yeah, you would think so, but...
Not
I
yet.
haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah.
Maybe when we get some good art, we'll whip up some T-shirts with something funny on them. What should the T-shirts say?
Oh, man.
Say, all the best lovers are in the apocalypse, or survivors do it with desperation.
I'm going to tell you this right now. The best thing you could possibly do is just put Bill the dog on a T-shirt.
Just say Bill the dog.
Bill the dog.
Bill on top of that, the dog.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, didn't you mention that Acast might be able to do like an early release type of strategy, or am I making that up?
What do you mean?
Oh, okay. Yeah, because on my Patreon, my patrons get access to everything I do a few days early.
I can do that. And I do post the full scripts, right? So you can't get the full scripts until you sign up. And I do post some bonus content. So I've been reading some other stories from my other universes into audio and posting those.
Oh, great. On the feed. And are you reading those yourself?
Yeah.
Ah,
so
cool.
The audio quality is that much more work. But yeah.
Oh, cool. And I think the last thing I want to talk about is the length of the episodes. Now, I haven't done the math, but I know that your episodes got longer as the season progressed. But you also did more of an outro where you're kind of talking about your sci-fi fandom, going over some old movies, books that you've discovered over the years. Were the actual narratives, were they getting longer as well?
Yeah, so this is interesting, right? Because I was shooting for, 20 minutes, right? 15, 20 minutes. And typically I have enough time in my life, or I have enough creative energy to do 1,500 to 2,000 words. And that comes out to 15 minutes or so, right? But I said, okay, let's take this and make this, instead of calling this a disadvantage, let's make this part of our strength, right? This is what we do. And so I said, we're going to make this small bites of podcast. So yeah, they started out a little bit shorter as like 15 minutes, but then as I started, developing the story and getting into it, it was hard to keep them under, in that bite size, right? So now I try to get somewhere around 2,000 to 3,000 words.
Got it.
Right. So 2,000, 3,000 words comes out to be around 20 minutes or less. And then I started adding those outros because, I'm thinking about this stuff as I'm doing it. And I'm saying, maybe other people would be interested in what I'm thinking. Right. So some of this, if you like 1970s or 1940s science fiction, some of this old stuff that's been fun to explore, which is, all this stuff is crammed into me as a big meat grinder that comes out as After the Apocalypse, right? This is all the influences that I've collected throughout my life.
Oh,
and
great.
One of the things we were talking about on my Facebook group, which I forget what I did now. Oh, it's called Old Man Apocalypse, is the Facebook group. I said, what do you like about this? And one of the things that people said is we like the way that you're describing how, like, things are changing in the apocalypse, right? How nature is changing, how structures are changing, how this sort of thing. And I pulled that directly from that novel, The Earth Abides, right? Which I talked about in one of my outros. He does a great job. He's based in San Francisco, and he uses the Bay Bridge as sort of this metaphor. And throughout the book, the Bay Bridge is crumbling, and from the beginning to end, that really had a powerful influence on me on how he describes sort of how civilization slowly crumbled and the infrastructure slowly crumbled. And so that was, I wanted to share some of that stuff with people in the outro.
Yeah, and it is pretty amazing how fast the Earth will reclaim things. Like when you see an abandoned house that's only, especially in the South, where the forest will take back your house if you do not cut your grass. It's pretty wild.
The kudzu will get it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you got to cut your grass. You got to trim back those trees and vines because they will take over your house. And I went looking for some property to potentially buy, and saw the house, no problem. Went in the backyard, and then boom, I go buy one tree, and then there's a whole garage that no one knew was there, but it was just so overgrown already within just a couple of years of being abandoned, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, it is. That book, The Earth Abides, talks through all that stuff, right?
Yeah,
and so that's a good influence. But you're working right where my characters are right now.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, it's been really wild because I'm not a Tennessee native, but I've lived in Nashville for the last 4.5 years. So I'm like hearing about the Chattahoochee and going from Atlanta to East Tennessee mountains. My parents just bought property in the East Tennessee mountains, so it's been pretty cool to just kind of be able to picture these places from my own memory as I'm listening.
Yeah, so we cut right across the Appalachian Trail there, and now we're down, following the river, right?
Yeah.
That's the what is that? The Ohio River? Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Big river that goes through Tennessee on the border.
Yeah. Shoot, I'm gonna have to look this one up. There's the Chattahoochee, of course.
Yeah,
which
the
is
Hooch,
near
the Hooch is
Chattanooga.
in Georgia. That's down in Atlanta. But then,
Oh, gotcha.
yeah. So I'm trying. So I know the area, right? I've traveled a bunch with my work over the years, so I know all these places really well. And I'm trying to make it so that when you're listening, you can actually picture yourself there, right? Have enough environmental description that you can sort of live the moment with the characters, right?
Oh, totally. All right, so it's the Tennessee River that goes
Tennessee
from Knoxville
River.
to Chattanooga. I know, right? It gives itself away.
Yeah. And one of my editors lives up on Signal Mountain. Up.
Oh, fun! That's a great spot to
up on top
explore.
of Chattahoochee. So, and that, Chattahoochee.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Very cool. So, would you give our listeners
Chattanooga? That's what I meant to say. Chattanooga.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Chattanooga.
Edit that out.
Yeah, Signal Mountain is like an overlook of downtown Chattanooga. It's there's a bunch of hiking up there. There's also, what's it called? Rock City is up that way somewhere.
I don't know.
It's like this amusement park for nature lovers. I haven't been in it, but yeah, it looks pretty cool. Up on Lookout Mountain. And it's right on the border. You kind of get up there and the roads will just crisscross from Georgia to Tennessee, back and forth, which is pretty wild.
So that's so you know where the characters are. That probably helps you with the story.
Pretty good. Yeah, now I've got a whole new set because, sometimes I don't catch these things while I'm listening. But yeah.
But the other thing is I'm trying to be close, but not perfect, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm naming towns, that town may exist, but it may not be, I may be using the name of that town in another place, right? So it's, because I know I'm going to get, somebody's going to send me an angry email, right?
Of course, yeah. Hey, that's, you said it was 10 miles, but it's 8.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What would you say is kind of your biggest post-apocalypse influence? Are you a Mad Max fan? Have you gotten to play Fallout?
So I play a game called Dead Frontier for my gaming.
Nice.
Which is a MMO, massive multiplayer thing that I've been playing for a while. So I'm trying to max out my character before I kick it to the curb, but that's kind of fun.
Nice.
But it's more, I'm coming at it more from the science fiction world. And I remember seeing the first zombie movies, right? When there were only a couple zombie movies and people didn't know what to do with them, right? So Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, amazing movies, right?
Yes.
Amazing movies in their time. Like people didn't know what to do with them, right? They're like, what?
Right.
And of course, Walking Dead was a smart show. They jumped the shark now. I don't care about any of the new characters, so I haven't watched it in 3 years. But
got it. Yep.
But the first season was amazing.
Yeah, tons of fun.
28 Days Later, another good one, right?
Mm-hmm.
That first movie. But as far as the sort of Mad Max stuff, the original Mad Max was amazing, right? And you remember that original Mad Max, that was one of those movies where it was just, that director just did that, right? There was no, nobody wanted that movie. They just made it, right? And they made it in Australia. And if you watch those motorcycle chase scenes, those are done at actual speed, right? There's somebody out in a pickup truck filming these motorcycles going 90 miles an hour in the back country of Australia. So those are really good. I love that character, that Mad Max character. Not so much when they got into the Tina Turner stuff, but
everyone either loves or hates Thunderdome. That's
and
the way
then
it goes.
the sort of the classic smart sci-fi stuff like Blade Runner and stuff like that. Yeah, I love that.
That's great. So will we see any Blade Runner-esque landscapes popping up?
Oh, I don't know.
After the apocalypse?
I don't know. I have to think about that.
Well, sometimes it those stories, it's like long after the apocalypse. So during the rebuild, right?
Right.
During some new society that comes later.
Yeah.
That's where those kind of landscapes pop up.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it's futuristic. If it was if civilization actually went away and you drop back to early medieval times, people wouldn't be dressing like that, doing that stuff. They'd be out trying to grow potatoes, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Can I go catch an animal so I can eat this month?
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Interesting. Well, I'm super excited to see where After the Apocalypse continues to, and I cannot wait for this next episode, which should come out
this afternoon.
Really?
Yeah, if everything goes right.
Oh, cool.
I had Robert do some retakes. He had some funny misreads, and we'll edit that up. I haven't written my outro yet, so I got to write my outro.
Oh, fun. It's pretty interesting. I started doing like my intros and my outros on this show, and they're actually a lot of fun. I was nervous about them at first, had a hard time writing them, and then I realized, they kind of just happen.
So do you find yourself sort of thinking about them all week? Like you'll be doing something, you go, oh, I got to remember that for my intro.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And if I don't take the note, it's gone forever.
Right, exactly. You got to stop and type it into your phone. Siri, remember koala bears. Koala bears.
And then later you're like, what's that for?
What? What was I thinking?
Yeah. Oh, totally. All right. So the good news is for you guys listening to this show, After the Apocalypse Season 1 is probably out in its completion. So you guys can go binge that right now. So I know you're on Acast, but it's pretty much everywhere.
Everywhere.
Podcasts can be found.
Yep,
Is that right?
Everywhere. Even
Awesome.
over on YouTube, you can listen to it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I do the same thing. And give us your best description of this show, After the Apocalypse.
So that's a good question, because I have to come up with all this stuff from my book cover stuff, right? My blurbs.
Yeah.
It's a post-pandemic universe, and we follow the survivors, and we see how they respond to, civilization blinking out, right? And follow them through their adventures and their challenges.
That's perfect.
And there's a dog.
Don't forget Bill the dog.
And one of the main characters is an old guy who's a ultra runner.
The characters are great. They're really fun. And you definitely feel for them. They're very human.
Yeah. And Robert does a great job. I'm really pleased with, especially these later episodes. He really knows the characters, and he's able to infuse, the right sensibilities into them.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, and I got one last question for you. This one's a zinger. Your nickname is Mad Dog. You're Chris Mad Dog Russell. Where's that come from?
Mad Dog. So I did it on purpose for you, Mike, because I know you're makeshift, right? And
That's me.
I was researching you a little bit, and everybody's got a little apocalypse nickname.
Yeah,
right?
they're like festival names, like wasteland names. Yeah.
So same thing. If you're hiking the Appalachian Trail, you get your trail name, right?
Uh-huh.
So in the running world where I live, same thing, right? Everybody has a nickname. So I'm Mad Dog.
Awesome.
And that has to do with my attitude towards racing.
Well, now go on.
So all right, this is a long story. You guys don't care about this stuff, man. So I was running a half marathon down in New Bedford, Massachusetts.
Yeah. Yep.
And I was there with a running club called the Goon Squad, which is sort of a radical running club.
Awesome.
And I wasn't a member yet, but I rode down there with them. And I went out in the course, and I went out too hard, and I pulled something in my leg. And so they sort of passed me while I was standing there with, injured.
Uh-huh.
And then I said, to hell with it, and jumped back in the race and passed them all again. And they're like, you're a Mad Dog.
Oh, yes.
You're a member of our club now, and your name is Mad Dog.
That's so great. That's a well-deserved nickname. So well done.
There you go. That's probably first time I've ever told that story on on a podcast.
Yes. Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's awesome. I wish my name had that kind of a story, but I made it up for my show. And a lot of Wastelanders, there's a few different camps. Some people believe that you have to be given your name by either your tribe mates or just kind of earn it some way.
Right.
But I needed one for my YouTube channel, so I needed it. And then Makeshift was, I needed to be able to respond to something, so I made it sound kind of like my name, Mike. So it's like Makeshift when I had the Australian accent.
That's great.
Anyway.
But
yeah.
you're right, because, and the trouble is, if somebody gives you a good name like Mad Dog, you're like, great, I'll take that, right?
Yeah.
Because usually they're giving you a name like, Diaper Head or something, right?
Right. Oh, totally. Yeah. And, the making fun of you with love nickname is not always the one you want to be called, 10 years later.
Yeah. You end up being Booger.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Awesome. Okay, guys. So I'm going to put all these links to After the Apocalypse, the web series. Also, the Patreon, if you want to help support Mad Dog, Chris Russell, creating more of these, because I swear you guys are going to love this show. You're going to get hooked, and you're going to want more. So consider dropping a couple dollars over there to help keep the show running. Chris, thanks so much for coming on the show today. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to talk to you.
Yeah, Mike, this was great. Thank you so much for having me on. I really
Absolutely.
enjoyed it.
Oh, such a good time. Yeah, and getting to talk about what makes this show tick is great. And I'm definitely looking forward to hearing this last episode, which, again, you guys can listen to right now. I cannot wait for season 2.
Right, man. It's a wrap.
Awesome. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, for all you out there, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends. And if you hated it, share it with your enemies on the collar of a wonderfully good boy named Bill the Dog. I'll see you next time, survivors. Stay alive. Hey survivors, if you want to help support The Apocalypse Post and get some rad merch in exchange, head over to theapocalypsepost.square.site, where you can pick up some patches, postcards, or our newest edition, a set of guitar picks. Or get yourself a limited edition Apocabob pin. This little man is showing the world that all it takes to survive the end times is a gas mask and a dream of, well, just staying alive.